Roger and Garp versus Rocks D. Xebec. This is the climactic end of the God Valley incident. The cover page of One Piece chapter 1165, titled Echo, features Law using Beppo as a pillow, while Beppo uses Zeus as a pillow, while Zeus uses a sheep as a pillow. On the precipice of their collision, Rocks extended a tearful plea towards Roger and Garp. Garp double-checked that Roger could hear Rocks in his head too. Roger infused his sword with Haki and agreed. While lunging towards them, Rocks asked the two men to end him. As a coated blade was swung and Rocks wept, Roger took note of his words, demeanor, and expression. When their swords met, Roger shouted that none of it was adding up. Meanwhile, Garp leapt in for an attack of his own. He coated his fist with Haki and slammed it into the monster pirate's nose. But Rocks was far too durable. In fact, it was like he was blocking Garp's punch with his face. All while Roger continued to strain against his saber, Rocks re-established his grip. He sent Roger and Garp flying with an outpour of Haki. The two men crashed into mountains courtesy of Rocks. They could only cry out from the insane level of power. Overhead, light made its way through the clouds. Many people saw something unbelievable. The sky itself had been split. So as if it wasn't already clear, being on the island was extremely dangerous. Kyo decided to steal a ship and escape with some other pirates. When they asked about Rocks' ship, he made it clear that no one would be going back. With a billion berry worth of treasure in tow, Shiki happily exclaimed that the Rocks pirates were done for. And they weren't the only ones, cause plenty of pirates were still running for their lives. At the same time, Garp ordered the Marines to set sail with every survivor and officer that they could, while Roger told his crew to get moving once Rayleigh's group meets up with them, then wait for him out at sea. I guess one of the benefits of not having a devil fruit is that you can actually swim. The two warriors vowed to return to their groups. They cast aside their jackets. Garp mentioned that he only came to God Valley in order to catch Roger and Rocks. And Roger only showed up to find Shaki and swipe some treasure. So he proposed a temporary truce between them. Rocks was overtaken by rage. Garp wasn't happy about it, but agreed that they needed to stop Rocks. Garp leapt while Rocks lunged. Roger ran in the opposite direction. He prepared himself and lashed out with a strike from behind. Rocks was sent crashing into the rocky surface he just broke into. Then Garp grabbed one of his legs while mentioning the man's strange new form. He reeled back and flung their opponent while asking if they can't undo it somehow. Roger jumped above, and with a destructive strike, he urged the man to wake up. Rayleigh insisted that their group hurry up since Roger wouldn't stop fighting unless he's sure that they're all safe. But even they could sense the strangeness of the Haki being exchanged. It was just too much. Gloriosa showed up next to Gabon and decided to hitch a ride with the Roger pirates. And as far as we've seen, she did nothing at all. She had no contribution to God Valley. Elsewhere, Big Mom insisted that Kaido owes her a lifelong debt in exchange for the devil fruit he stole from her. Kaido didn't care. He told Linlin that he would make a crew of his own where brutality is their only rule. Clearly, the brat had gotten bold. Big Mom shouted that he would never beat her. Strusen interrupted them to tell Linlin that they needed to leave with as much treasure as possible. She ended the conversation by telling Kaido that one day she would come by to collect, and he promised to crush her when she does. All the while, Roger and Garp were being overwhelmed by Rocks. The forest was burning, and the man who seemed to be responsible was sure that Whitebeard had broken the island's mountain. Whitebeard didn't recognize him. The man could tell that Whitebeard's crew was in the midst of disbanding. Polo Graham, captain of the Polo Pirates, introduced himself. So Marco's old man, or previous incarnation as we've said, is named Polo. Oda has been preparing this pun for over 20 years, guys. Polo claimed to be a huge fan. And since the big guy needed a ship, Polo suggested that they join forces. Whitebeard's response wasn't very warm, but it looks like Polo's enthusiasm won out in the end. Stussy was angrily making off with some treasure as she questioned where Whitebeard was. But Ganzui had no idea, and they were joined by Gil Bastar, the main character of Oda's one-shot, Wanted, and apparently the previous user of Perona's Devil Fruit, which is absolutely brilliant because in that story, Gil could see and speak with ghosts. Aboard a marine ship, officers were trying to talk down a rogue dragon. With a gun pointed at his superior officer, Dragon questioned if the man could condone what they'd done on the island. They tried to dissuade him, but Dragon demanded that they bring all the assembled survivors aboard the ship, that they would be saved, and if anyone disagrees, he will end them himself. The loss of both babies he was entrusted with has pushed Dragon over the edge. The founder of the revolution has arisen, all without his dad Garp knowing that he's on the island. They promised Dragon that this route wouldn't end well for him, but the youngster welcomed them to try and stop him. Rayleigh and Gabon had both made it to the ship, but decided to run back for Roger while the others set sail and wait for them. While on a marine warship that was already sailing away, an Imu-possessed Saint Saturn declared that the island never existed. The battle of Roger and Garp versus Rocks waged on. The top secret level S details of the God Valley incident are sparse and kept by G11 and CP6. Roger asked Garp if the government knows about the dark monster they saw, something that he considered to be an affront to their so-called justice. Garp agreed with the sentiment, and with that, it looks like all these characters perceive Imu like we do, as a dark blob. The names of the humans that were hunted were erased. The island's location, size, and population were erased too. And to this day, no one knows how many people died. If Garp wanted to leave the Navy, Roger suggested that he join their crew. But Garp refused, since without him, there wouldn't be anyone around to protect the Marines. Although, with events like these, that kinda sounds like protecting Nazis from Hitler. Getting back on his feet, Roger told Garp that it all comes down to mass. The Vice Admiral had no idea what he was talking about. Roger explained that armament Haki usually counters Devil Fruit powers, and on top of that, he was using Conqueror's Haki coding, so he didn't believe that his attacks weren't having an effect. Garp figured that it's because Rox is also using Conqueror's Haki to protect himself, so it makes sense that they would cancel each other out. Roger totally agreed, and if they can't get past that, then the damage wouldn't get through. Trading blows against such a monster was a recipe for disaster. So the next time they used Conqueror's Haki, Roger's plan was for them to put all their weight behind it and disregard how terrible the backlash would be on their bodies. Garp understood that doing so would be a risk to their own survival. This was bound to incapacitate all of them, but if they don't land their hits, then they're as good as dead. An approaching stomp caught Garp's attention. The Marine called out to their infamous opponent. He wasn't sure if words would be much comfort to him at this point. He didn't even know what was wrong with the guy, but he could feel the man's overwhelming frustration. Rox cried again. Roger had to wipe his own eyes as he told the fool that this was no time for tears. He wound up an attack. Garp did something similar. Rox cried out in anticipation. Kagusuchi's ace! Infinitum explosion! They struck Rox with all their might. The world government did everything they could to make this incident go away, but the disbanding of the Rox pirates would create a persistent echo. They destabilized an entire era, and the reverberations of their legacy would continue to shake the world. And so, at the end of his life, Rox did not smile. And now the God Valley incident is just about over. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this all connects to King Harold and Elbaf. Also, Roger really looks like a wide version of Ace in this one, but I really like that we're seeing the familial resemblance between them. Although, older Roger doesn't really look like the 40 and 60-year-old versions of Ace that Oda drew. In fact, I'd say he looks more like Shanks. So I guess his mother's genes started fighting back. Her name, Rouge, is the French word for red, so I guess a connection to Shanks' red hair genetics could be possible. Whatever the case, I'm really gonna miss seeing Rox and his crew. but I am eager to see where this flashback takes us next. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.